I'm just going to read, I guess I'm going to read the prologue, which some of you may know from before, but it's very different now, because I made it suck less. So, I don't know, I can't decide if I'm going to read that or if I'm going to read the first chapter. But I think the prologue is, it's kind of long.
That's okay.
Everybody, and you have to turn off your phones. It's like, it's too long, man.
What make you unhappy?
What?
You have to read the whole first chapter.
Kind of. I mean, what are you going to read? Are you going to read for like 5 minutes? Because I want to take questions and stuff. Yeah. I'm just going to read the prologue.
Can I borrow one of your sweet
Yeah, you're right though. I've already read the prologue. I'll start the first chapter and then I'll just like stop. Okay, like when I'm bored. So like all the prologue is, some of you may remember it, it's we meet this girl named Margaret Roth Spiegelman, but she's 9, and she's crazy, a little bit crazy, and she and her next door neighbor Quentin, who both live in this kind of Truman Show of a neighborhood, are encounter a guy who has died, and then they go home and that's it. And I think I will. It is reasonably kid safe. I will make it kid safer as I go, because obviously we have young.
Don't worry about it.
Young readers. Even so, not for you, but for me, so that I can see it. The longest day of my life began tardily. I woke up late, took too long in the shower, and ended up having to enjoy my breakfast in the passenger seat of my mom's minivan at 7:17 in the morning. I usually got a ride to school with my best friend Ben Starling, but Ben had gone to school on time, making him useless to me. On time for us was 30 minutes before school actually started, because the half hour before the first bell was the highlight on all of our social calendars, standing outside the side door that led into the band room and talking. Most of my friends were in band, and most of my free time during school was spent within 20 feet of the band room, but I myself was not in the band, because I suffer from the kind of tone deafness that is generally associated with actual deafness. I was particularly funny to those of you who've had the pleasure of hearing me sing on the blog. I was going to be 20 minutes late, which technically meant that I'd still be 10 minutes early for school itself. As she drove, Mom was asking me about classes and finals and prom. I don't believe in prom, I reminded her as she rounded a corner. I expertly angled the Raisin Bran to accommodate the G-forces. I'd done this before. Well, there's no harm in just going with a friend, she said. I'm sure you could ask Cassie Heine. And I could have asked Cassie Heine, who was actually perfectly nice and pleasant and cute despite having a truly unfortunate last name. But it's not just that I don't like prom, I said. I also don't like people who like prom. Although this was, in point of fact, untrue. Ben, for instance, was absolutely gaga over the idea of going. Mom turned into school, and I held the mostly empty bowl with both hands as we drove over a speed bump. I glanced over at the senior parking lot. Margaret Roth Spiegelman's silver Honda was parked in its usual spot. Mom pulled the minivan into a cul-de-sac outside the band room and kissed me on the cheek. I could see Ben and my other friends standing in a semicircle. I walked up to them, and the half-circle effortlessly expanded to include me. They were talking about my ex-girlfriend, Susie Chung, who played cello and was apparently creating quite a stir by dating a baseball player named Taddy Mack. Whether this was his Christian name, I did not know, but at any rate, Susie had decided to go to prom with him. Another casualty. Bro, said Ben, standing across from me. He nodded his head and turned around. I followed him out of the circle and through the door. A small, olive-skinned creature who had hit puberty but had never hit it very hard. Ben had been my best friend since 5th grade, when we both finally owned up to the fact that neither of us was likely to attract anyone else as a best friend. How you doing, I asked. We were safely inside, everyone else's conversation making ours inaudible. Radar's going to prom, he said morosely. Radar was our other best friend. We called him Radar because he looked a little bit like that bespectacled guy on MASH, except that 1, the TV radar wasn't black, and 2, at some point after the nicknaming, our radar grew like a foot and started wearing contacts, so actually he didn't look anything like that guy at all. But with 3 weeks left in high school, we weren't very well going to go about re-nicknaming him. That girl Angela, I asked? Radar never told us much about his love life, but this did not dissuade us from frequent speculation. Ben nodded and then said, you know my big plan to ask some fresh bunny to prom because they're the only girls who don't know about the Bloody Ben story? This is going to be a hard one to tell. Let's think of good, yeah. I'm gonna have to find a way. Well, Ben said, this morning some darling little 9th grade honey bunny came up to me and asked me if I was Bloody Ben, and I began to explain that it was due to a kidney infection, and she giggled and ran away, so that's out. That's all I'm gonna say about that. Ben started outlining plans for finding a date, but I was only half listening because through the thickening mass of humanity crowding the hallway, I could see Margot Roth-Spiegelman. She was next to her locker, standing beside her boyfriend, Jace. She wore a white skirt to her knees and a blue print top. I could see her collarbone. She was laughing at something hysterical. Her shoulders bent forward, her big eyes crinkling at their corners, her mouth open wide. But it didn't seem to be anything Jace had said, because she was looking away from him, across the hallway to a bank of lockers. I followed her eyes and saw Becca Arrington draped all over some baseball player like she was an ornament and he a Christmas tree. I smiled at Margot, even though I knew she couldn't see me. Bro, you should just get with her. Forget about Jace. God, that is a candy-coated honey bunny. As we walked, I kept taking glances at her through the crowd. Ben's pretty nerdy, by the way. As we walked, I kept taking glances at her through the crowd, quick snapshots, the photographic series entitled Perfection Stands Still While Mortals Walk Past. As I got closer, I thought maybe she wasn't laughing after all. Maybe she'd received a surprise or a gift or something. She couldn't seem to close her mouth. Yeah, I said to Ben, not listening, still trying to see as much of her as I could without being too obvious. It wasn't even that she was so pretty. She was just so awesome, and in the literal sense. Margot Roth-Spiegelman, whose 6-syllable name was often spoken in its entirety with a kind of quiet reverence. And then we were too far past her, too many people walking between her and me, and I never even got close enough to hear her speak or to understand whatever the hilarious surprise had been. Ben shook his head, because he had seen me see her 1,000 times, and he was used to it. Honestly, she's hot, but she's not that hot. You know who's seriously hot? Who? I asked. Lacey, he said, who was Margot's other best friend. Also your mom. Bro, I saw your mom kiss you on the cheek this morning, and forgive me, but I swear to God, I was like, man, I wish I was cute. I elbowed him in the ribs, but I was still thinking about Margot, because she was the only legend who lived next door to me. Margot Roth-Spiegelman, whose stories of epic adventures would blow through school like a summer storm. An old guy living in a broke-down house in Hot Coffee, Mississippi, taught Margot how to play the guitar. Margot Roth-Spiegelman, who spent 3 days traveling with the circus. They thought she had potential on the trapeze. Margot Roth-Spiegelman, who drank a cup of herbal tea with the Millionaires backstage after a concert in St. Louis while they drank whiskey. Margot, who got into that concert by telling the bouncer she was the bassist's girlfriend, and didn't they recognize her? And come on guys, seriously, my name is Margot Roth-Spiegelman, and if you go back there and you ask the bassist to take a look at me, he'll tell you that I either am his girlfriend or he wishes I was. And then the bouncer did so, and the bassist said, yeah, that's my girlfriend, let her in the show. And then later the bassist wanted to hook up with her, and she rejected the bassist. The stories, when they were shared, inevitably ended with, I mean, can you believe it? We often could not, but they always proved true. And then we were at our lockers. Radar was leaning against Ben's locker, typing into a handheld device. So you're going to prom, I said to him. He looked up and then looked back down. I'm de-vandalizing the Omnictionary. Omnictionary is the Wikipedia of this book. I'm de-vandalizing the Omnictionary article about a former Prime Minister of France. Last night someone deleted the entire entry and replaced it with the sentence, Jacques Chirac is a gay. Probably funny to nerdfighters. Which, as it happens, is incorrect both factually and grammatically. Radar is a big-time editor of this online user-created reference source called Omnictionary. His whole life is devoted to the maintenance and well-being of it. This was but one of several reasons why him having a prom date was somewhat surprising. So you're going to prom, I repeated. Sorry, he said without looking up. It was a well-known fact that I was opposed to prom. Absolutely nothing about any of it appealed to me. Not slow dancing, not fast dancing, not the dresses, and definitely not the rented tuxedo. Renting a tuxedo seemed to me an excellent way to contract some hideous disease from its previous tenant, and I did not aspire to become the world's only virgin with an STD. Bro, Ben said to Radar, the Fresh Honeys know about the Bloody Ben story. Radar put the handheld away finally and nodded sympathetically. So anyway, Ben continued, my two remaining strategies are either to purchase a prom date on the internet or fly to Missouri and kidnap someone. I tried telling Ben that saying honey bunny sounded more sexist and lame than retro cool, but he refused to abandon the practice. He called his own mother a honey bunny. I'll ask Angela if she knows anybody, Radar said, although getting you a date to prom will be harder than turning lead into gold. Getting you a date to prom is so hard, I said, that the hypothetical idea itself is actually used to cut diamonds. Radar tapped a locker twice with his fist to express his approval and then came back with another. Ben, getting you a date to prom is so hard that the American government believes that the problem cannot be solved with diplomacy, but will instead require force. I was trying to think of another one when we all three simultaneously saw the human-shaped container of anabolic steroids known as Chuck Parson walking toward us with some intent. That's all. Stop. Thanks.